place for politics.
In the meantime, President Obama and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are denying a rift between the two following an hour-long meeting, as important for the show of friendship as for the actual conversation. The focus was on broad subjects, but both have said that they support face-to-face talks with the Palestinians.
I believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu wants peace. I think he's willing to take risks for peace. And during our conversation, he once again reaffirmed his willingness to engage in serious negotiations with the Palestinians.
Dore Gold is the former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations.
To that peace. And this peace, I think, will better the lives of Israelis, of Palestinians, and it certainly would change our region. The Israelis are prepared to do a lot to get that peace in place.
Dore Gold is former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations and president of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. He formerly served as foreign policy advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu. Mr. Ambassador, thanks for joining us. It's good to see you again.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
There are suggestions that this meeting was largely political, that the Democrats in this country are worried in advance of upcoming elections that Republicans are being perceived as stronger friends to Israel. So I want to ask you how you see this meeting. Is it political, talking about domestic politics here? Is it largely symbolic to deny some of those rumors that there's a rift between the two? Or could it potentially be substantive?
Let me address that issue of the rift, because I think it's extremely important. There's been a buzz running around Washington in the last year and a half or so that the U.S. and Israel are no longer strategic allies. That was true in the Cold War, but in the post-Cold War era, that's finished. I think the statements made by both President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu made clear that the U.S. and Israel have an active alliance. I think also the issue of respecting Israel's need for having deterrence capabilities in a very dangerous Middle East came up in the statements of President Obama, and that was important. And finally, I think the differences, and there were real differences between these two sides, related to the Arab-Israeli peace process, that did not seem to cloud over the meeting. I think they still have different views about how to resolve the conflict, but I think that the U.S. side is taking the Israeli side at its word. So in general, it seemed to be a good meeting.
If I'm reading what you have said, and it's being reported correctly, you do have some concerns, however, that the Palestinians have gained some traction potentially by being very specific in their demands about what they think it is that needs to happen next for things to move forward, and that Israel has been much more vague. Is that an accurate depiction?
That's an extremely accurate depiction of a concern that I have had when I visited Washington repeatedly. You ask the Palestinians, what do you want from the peace process? They say Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital. And you ask the Israelis, what do they want? And they say, we want peace, a very worthy goal, but very vague and abstract. And what is necessary in the period ahead is for Israel to be far more specific in its public diplomacy about what its needs are. And those needs are essentially that Israel, at the end of the day, will have defensible borders and will be able to protect a united Jerusalem. If we come forward with those positions, the Palestinians have their positions, we may be able to reach a compromise. But the world has to know that Israel needs defensible borders and will not expose its population to the uncertainties that we went through in the last 15 years.
Ambassador Dore Gold, thank you so much for being with us. And now I want to get a view from the Palestinian side. Dr. Ziad Assouli is president of the American Task Force on